his excellence and words of thought. Thank you so much, sir. And I, on behalf of Takshila Business family and even on my personal behalf, thank his presence and making us a part of this esteemed and prestigious book launch. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Just look at you for that, I think maybe these are
audible, all of you sitting at the back? Yes. I'll feel more comfortable if I can come down and talk from there. Is this okay with all of you? The purpose for writing this book was very simple. This is a topic which has created a lot of upheaval in the economy, and the climate of opinion, if you look at about demonetization and the manner it has been executed, after, when you are looking back and see what has happened in last 1 year, it seems to be divided sharply into two blocks. The one who is for demonetization, so those will say, no, this is good. And then we also have people who speaks deadly against demonetization. They say, no, this is bad. And there is a lot of confusion about certain things which is happening around demonetization. So figures are not very clear. Things are not very clear. The whole purpose is not very clear to a layman like you and me. So I thought this is good time that there should be clarity on this topic, and we started jotting down things and writing something on this book. So the purpose of book is to make this topic very simple, look simple, and also educate people, the reader, about the whole phenomenon. This book is all about focusing on all these dimensions. So we looked at all these phenomena. So I'll just quickly give you some kind of overview, and then we'll go back to you. I would like you to ask some questions, and then we'll take it forward. As I said, we'll also do some concept building. So I'll here and there I'll also throw some interesting situations to you which you can react, and then we can take it forward. So approximately 30 to 45 minutes will be fine, sir? Okay, so before we begin, I would like to thank Kishorji, my good friend. As he already mentioned that we have been in touch from last 4-5 years, and we have been good friends. So and he's also almost we share quite a lot in common. He's a dynamic person in the sense that he has a lot of innovative ideas. And then he keeps on doing things, which is very important, because even this morning I was talking to him and I said the future lies with a person who believes in innovation, because the market is so dynamic that you have to keep on innovating. Even as an individual, as a student, if you look at yourself, that you have to keep on changing, you have to keep on reinventing, you have to keep on looking at things differently. One thing is not going to be the prescription for all times to come. One thing is not going to help all your problems to solve, get solved. So you have to keep on looking at different options. And when you're looking at different options, innovations, you might fail because that's the order of the day. So if you do 10 things, 5-6 things will fail. It doesn't matter. So even if 1 or 2 succeeds, it's good. So this should not be an argument that we should not do things. So doing things is better than not doing things. So when you start doing things, then it will have its own positive, it will also have negative, it will have criticism. So I'm just quoting this example from the life, and as it happens in the life and the current market scenario, if you look at, this is the best strategy that one can follow, keep on changing. So it's true with the economy, right? So we must prefer economy which keeps on changing, innovating, doing things, in place of the economy which does not actually do anything, right? So if you look at the how the Indian economy has been managed over time, so liberalization started in 1991, and after that it took some kind of pace, and it happened, things happened, started happening. So we had this combination of liberalization, privatization, and globalization. So we did quite a lot on all these three fronts. But there was a kind of, almost like stagnancy that has come to the economy in the sense of policy making. So if you look at the last 30, 40 years, this has been described by many scholars. If you read some research papers of this period, how Indian economy was viewed. They called it policy paralysis. You must have heard about this term. Have you heard about this term? Policy paralysis. So a lot of scholars, especially from abroad, they wrote a lot of papers. You can find those papers and read how they have described the Indian economy as being suffering from policy paralysis. So they said, economy is not moving at all. So there are so many things on the table, but we are not taking decisions. Right? I mean, the policy makers are not taking decisions on that. So almost like, 10 to 20 important bills were on the table. Lot of structural reform agenda were on the table, but in terms of taking decisions on that, it was not happening much. So this whole period was called the period of economic paralysis, and this has actually cost the economy a lot. So if you really want to assess the cost of not doing anything and the cost of doing something, you have to make a comparison. So I'm of the opinion particularly, because I believe personally that, doing is better than not doing. Taking decisions is better than not taking decisions. Be clear about certain things is more important than, living in procrastination. So I believe for the economy as well. So I believe that if the economy is doing something, it will have its cost, but, it's better than not doing anything. The cost of not doing anything is bitter. But the cost of doing anything is in terms of, maybe you can count them and you can get over it, and the long-term benefit can be much, much better than, more than what you can perceive it today. So that's one point. So demonetization, in my opinion, is one policy active tool. Activism, it represents policy activism, right? So against policy activism against the policy paralysis period, I'm really happy that this is happening. And then immediately after demonetization, there was GST. So it's a law that never stated that demonetization is going to bring about those things. So government actually put their bet on a couple of things. The first one was the black money, because demonetization is considered as a tool to unearth the black. So there are a lot of tools that we use. Black money is also known as the parallel economy. You have heard about that? Parallel economy. So what is parallel economy? Any of you? What is parallel economy? Yeah, and anything that comes to your mind, yes.
An economy which runs parallel to the main economy.
Parallel to the main economy. So, I mean, you're right, but it's not making it very clear. Yes.
Like economy which is not disclosed, not disclosed property.
It's not disclosed properly. Very good. And it's there in the economy. Fantastic. Give a clap to him. Parallel economy is basically the economy that you have. So economy you can assess, you can see, it's on the book of account. You can talk about it. What is the size of GDP? You know that. What is the size of money supply? You know that. What is the saving? You know that. But do you also know that apart from what you know about your economy, there is a parallel things happening in the economy? For example, money supply is one factor in which parallel economy actually gets manifested very hugely, right? So you have a money supply of particular size, and there is a particular size money which is also running in the economy parallelly, but we don't know about that because it's not brought to the book of account, right? So it's parallelly going. That's the reason why it is called parallel. So what is going to be the impact of this parallel economy? It's going to be very fragile, You plan for, let's say, inflation. So you want to bring down the inflation, you say money supply should be cut down by 5% or 10%, and then it's going to, curb the inflation. So that's your policy. But how about the money supply which is running parallelly in the economy? And if that is very strong and huge, then your whole policy is going to compress down, and it's not going to work, right? So parallel economy is the biggest stumbling block in making any effective policy. And most of the policies in India has failed precisely because of the running of the parallel economy, right? And this has happened in all over the world. If you look at the disintegration of Soviet Russia. So the erstwhile USSR, why it got so much disintegrated? Was it political or was it economic? So if you really go into the detail of it, you will find that it's more of an economic logic what made the Russian Federation to disintegrate so much. Because in Russian Federation, almost 50% supply was made by the cooperatives, because you know the main supplies were made by the cooperatives, which is owned by the government. And almost like 50% was coming from the black side, which the government did not know about that. Because people need goods and services. And if cooperative fails to supply 100% of it, somebody will supply, right? And then the situation was that there is a queue for buying the bread, and the person who is standing at the at the end of the queue is not able to get the bread, because bread gets over, by the time he reaches the counter, right? So therefore, there is a demand for bread, and somebody will come and produce and supply the bread. So how the people are eating in the economy if 50% supply is there? So there's somebody who is supplying, right? So there was a huge build-up of black money over there. And this actually caused a lot of problems, policy failure and all. So your policy failure can be instigated by the presence of black money, and therefore black money is a major issue. Black money is also associated with corruption, right? So when this government came into power, it also talked about corruption. It said, our main motto is to fight corruption. So black money, corruption together. So what could be the best tool to fight it out? So one tool that was tried in the past was also voluntary disclosure scheme, VDS. It's also one tool that India tried, but it didn't succeed much because, of course, it brought in a lot of, black money to the white money, converted that, but it did not address the problem of corruption. So VDS actually worked, but sans the addressing the problem of corruption. But black money and corruption both have to be tackled together. You cannot isolate them and say, no, we are attacking the black money, we are not tackling the corruption.
So by what rate the 500 notes is, or higher denomination, or the 500 notes is getting changed, or 1000 note is getting changed in the economy or changing. So you look at the 500 is actually changing in the range of 70 to 80%. So in general, the currency in circulation is changing by 40%. The 500 note circulation is changing by
long time in India. What is Shell Company? Any of you? What is a Shell Company? Well, if you don't understand Shell Company, you won't understand demonetization. Yes. Okay. They don't have physical existence, right? Yeah. Okay. They are registered. Okay. What do?
They only for doing.
They do money laundering, right? So their job is to just create different layers of transactions.
Yes.
And then convert the white money into black money into white money, black money into white money. So their job is to do money laundering. So they are basically not all shell companies are bad, because we need shell companies to do these kind of transactions. But what has happened in the economy in the last 20-30 years, if you look at, there is a mushrooming growth of shell company like this. A kind of, you can say, these are the fake companies. They are not producing anything. They are not adding any value to the economy. Right? So if a company is producing X goods or Y goods or X services, Y services, they are adding something to the economy. But share companies are not adding anything. They are simply doing financial transactions, taking money from here, sending there. They have created that kind of layer, and they are registered, right? So what was this happening? So nobody was taking interest in that. But this whole exercise of demonetization has unearthed them. So it's going to be a huge revolution. So as of now, the figure that you have is about, in the cash, about 18% of undisclosed income that has come to the banking system, right? So about 18%. The best estimation of the black money in the currency circulation is about 20 to 30%. So I mean, we don't have any exact estimation available by any economy or any economist or any official channel, because it's very difficult to assess the volume of black money. But the best estimate says that it's between 20 to 30%. So if 20-30% is the black money in the circulation, in cash circulation, and you have already 18% undetected income back to the banking system, so now every cash which is there in the bank has an address. That's what Finance Minister said, and he is right. Earlier, the cash in the economy did not have an address. So now every cash which is coming back to the banking system has an address. This is almost 90, more than 90% cash is back. But out of that, 18% is undetected income. That's number one. Now the under lens, how many accounts are there? That's a huge number. So Jan Dhan accounts, there's a lot of money has been kept over there. So the government has brought or started issuing the notices to them. So what is going to happen in the next 6 months to 1 year? You will see that this 18% will go up to almost like 20 to 30%. So almost the black money will almost get over from the cash segment. That's my estimation. This is what I think going to happen. So probably in 1 year we are not able to see 30%, we are able to see 18%. But in the next 1 year you will see that it's going to go to 20-30%, which will wipe out all the black money from the cash segment, right? Now you can ask the question: the black money is not, cash is not the only source of black money. Of course you are right if you say this. Black money is in the gold because people had the rush to buy gold after demonetization. Then the black money is in the real estate. A lot of black money is in the real estate. Yeah, I mean, then you have to have right kind of laws to tackle those. So, for example, Benami Transfer Act is a right on the table and is going to work wonders. And SIT has been created by the government to look into all these major transactions that has happened. The NPAs are under lens, scanning lens. So you can see the multiple effort or the multiple onslaughts that the government is actually making to unearth the black money is worth praising. That's what I think. And it is not that it has not impacted, it has a huge impact that has been done on the economy. That's one side of demonetization. Now another side of demonetization is about formalizing the economy or digital economy that we can. That's what the government said, that is going to increase the digital transactions in the economy. So when we say digital transactions, why do you think that digital transactions are important or needed for the economy? Why is it not that we can do with cash and it's good enough? Any of you? Yeah. Fantastic, fantastic, good. You see, I mean, in this time frame, when you look at the rest of the world, you look at all these world which are doing good, their economies are doing good, including China, Singapore, or any economy of that sort, which you think is doing better than us. You just look at them. What is the amount of cash transaction happening in these economies? Is almost less than 20%, and 80% is either check, we call it digital transactions, online transactions, card transactions through card, NEFT transactions. So a lot of things are happening, right? Prepaid instruments are being used, right? PPI, we call it PPI, prepaid instruments. So a lot of prepaid instruments. A lot of prepaid instruments are used. So almost like 80%. So less than 20% cash. And what was happening in India? And what is the situation even now? So what was happening in India was, the time when the demonetization was done, what was happening in India is that almost like 90% cash economy, right? So any kind of estimation you take the official estimation, you take the non-official estimation, it will not be more than 10 to 15%, which is online or non-cash transactions. So do you think that this is the kind of economy we want? No, I mean, what can change this? If the things have not changed in the last 40 years, then what do you think is going to make this change in 1 year? Or you're going to, do you think that it's going to change in 1 year? No, but if you look at the result in the last 1 year after demonetization, it has actually worked as a vehicle of behavioral change in the economy, right? So it's a complete behavioral change that you can see. Today, you and I talking about, prepaid instruments, we are talking about online transactions. So even people at the grassroots, they have learned how to use it and they are inclined to use it. It's not that they're not. I was talking to some of my friends from bank and I asked them, what is happening at the grassroots? Do you really think that it's changing? The people's behavior is changing? They said earlier people were not talking about all such kind of transactions, but now almost like more than 75% in his rough estimation, those who are coming to bank for transactions, they are talking about NEFT transactions or some other kind of transactions. So NEFT transaction, if you look at in the last 1 year, it has increased from 90 lakh crores to almost like 200 lakh crore. Can you believe that? In 1 year, can you achieve this result by any other tool than demonetization? I'll say, okay, fine, you're right. But this is, and that's the reason why without reason, it's not without reason that the World Bank is praising India's economic policy. So yesterday there was a statement by World Bank. They said, the India is doing good. Right? So this is called the formalization of the economy. The digital transaction has increased quite a lot. We call it formal economy. We don't need a large chunk of non-formal economy. We need large chunk of formal economy. It's not that the cash is going to be wiped out completely from the economy. It's not going to happen. And it has not happened in any economy of the world. Neither we are looking for that. Because there has to be some cash, because cash is something which is so dear to us, right? We need to look at cash. We need to touch currency. Right? We need to have it in my pocket. That's going to happen. But most of the transactions has to be online, because the problem in online transaction, is that you have to be honest. The problem is that you have to be honest. So you can't just say that, it's my business, you have no business to talk about it. No, we have business to talk about, right? Have you experienced this, that you have gone to buy anything from a small shop and they will not give you receipt at all? They will not charge you any GST even now. They will not charge you any GST, right? And they will say, okay, aapko le jaiye, koi dikkat nahi hai, right? You ask for formal receipt, they will not give you. Aapko wo kahega ki aap, if you want receipt, you will have to pay this much. If you don't want receipt, you have to pay this much. Are you aware about Aditya transactions? These are basic words, but it's happening in a huge. Aditya transactions are that the transactions are made on a simple, small piece of paper like this, this much of paper, or maybe this much of paper. And they will simply write 3 crore sign. And you take this slip to that agent, the agent will take that slip and will give you 3 crores. It's so honest transaction they do. Right? The dishonest transactions are done in such a beautiful, honest way. You can't be sure of any other transactions like this other than Aditya transactions. Right? They're so honest. They'll comply, they will deliver, they'll be on time, there will be no gap in that. Right? So formalization of economy is another achievement that, in my view. And therefore, if the finance minister is saying it was a watershed movement in India, I agree with him. Right? It was a watershed movement in India. Let's talk about now the third aspect of demonetization. So third aspect of demonetization, political jargon was used like it was a kind of second surgical strike. Whether it was a surgical strike of second nature or not, I don't know. But yes, it has actually had impact on 2 things. One, it made all these people who were miscreants, they ran out of cash. And when they ran out of cash, there's a lot of things that they were not able to do. Right? And therefore, the figure says that in last 1 year, the stone pelting in Jammu and Kashmir has gone down by 75%. That's a figure. I'm not saying anything from my side. Whether it has really gone down, not gone down, what has happened, I'm not saying. This is a figure which says, 75% down. And then there is a complete wipe out of the counterfeit currency. Counterfeit currency means nakli note, jali note, right? And there was a news that a lot of factories, so-called factories where the notes were getting printed, got actually stopped. Right? So it has a huge positive impact on counterfeit currency and maybe terror funding, as we say, right? So that's another big advantage that demonetization brought, though it is not an economic advantage, but it has got its impact, right? So this is third. Now let's talk about the fourth one. The fourth one is that we quite often talk about the grassroots, impact on the grassroots. Let's talk about the impact on manufacturing, agriculture, or maybe small business. Yes, there was some difficult time for them because they are attuned to cash transactions, right? And that's the reason why it is reflected in the downfall in the growth rate. But a measure like demonetization is expected to be followed by a slide in the growth rate, right? So if you talk about growth rate anywhere in the world where the demonetization has practiced, so you look at the history of demonetization, which are the countries which have actually implemented it, what happened in those countries after demonetization. Invariably, there was there was a fall of continuously 1 quarter to 2 quarters in the growth rate is expected. There was nothing unexpected that the growth rate is going to slide down, right? And the worst estimate of the slide given by the the critics of, let's say, critics below that, right? So you have around 5.7% or 6% growth rate, which is likely to climb up by all kind of estimation to 7% once again, right? So this has happened. But you know, if you look at the implementation of demonetization all over the world, a lot of preparedness are done, and then the refueling of the cash in the economy has been a major issue, and of course that created a lot of trouble at the grassroots, right? So it's a transition period that has to be passed. But if you ask me whether the transition period is over or it is still not over, so I think it's almost over, because now it's good enough time to see that the transition period is almost over. And now the time is that you're going to see positive results everywhere. For example, you know, the cash is flooded with, banks are flooded with cash, and then, you know, investment is going to come about. The infrastructure is the priority of the government, so a lot of money will go in infrastructure. Then if you look at the number of accounts that has been opened for the poor, it's amazing. It has never happened in the past history of India in the past 50, 60 years, if you look at it. So as many accounts as has been opened, and the direct transfer of subsidy is now happening to the poor. Amazing figure that has come very recently is about employees' provident fund contributions. So if you look at the EPF figure, it's amazingly increased in the last 1 year. So a lot of money is now people are putting, or the employers are putting into welfare schemes which they were not putting earlier for the poor. So for example, you know, there is an agency you have hired, outsource agency, to clean your campus, you know, and they have employed, let's say, 20 staff. Are they paying all those which is required to be paid to their employees? Earlier they were not, because, you know, they were not so much accountable. But now the rules have become so transparent and it's so accountable that they have started paying all the dues to them. And therefore, it's not surprising that the EPF figure had jumped like anything, right? So I don't have the exact figure, remember, but you know, you can check that. It had jumped like anything. And therefore, if you look at the top 20% income holder and the bottom 20% income holder in our economy, the difference between them is likely to go down in the times to come. So the moment you see after a year and they calculate the inequality, I'm pretty sure that you're going to have a scenario where the inequality will be reduced in the economy, because very naturally you can see that, you know, there is a trimming on the upper side and there is a boosting on the lower side, because direct transfer of benefits, EPF contribution is increasing, people are started getting their dues, right? They are coming to the formal economy, and therefore the income in the hands of poor are going to increase, while the black money concentration at the top has been reduced, and then you see the gap between the 20% up and the 20% down is going to go down. So this is one thing that nobody talked about. Neither the government officials are talking about, nor the critic of demonetization is talking about. But in my opinion, if you calculate this figure after a year, it's not surprising that it's going to go down in India, right? Then a lot of other reforms which is undertaken by the government around this is also helping the country, because, you know, a lot of bureaucracy has been trimmed down, and ease of doing business report, if you look at it. This is for the first time that India has improved 30 places. Have you read the ease of doing business report? Okay, very recently it has come by World Bank, actually publishes ease of doing business report. You should see that. Have a look at that. So it has got 10 parameters, and if you look at all these 10 parameters on which ease of doing business is calculated, so out of these 10 parameters, almost like 6 parameters India has improved. The overall improvement is about 30 points. So it has improved from 130 to 100 ranking, right? And the World Bank also calculates something called the distance to frontier figure. So you should know that as a student. So it's called DTF factor. So distance to frontier factor. So what it says is that, for example, tax compliance is one factor. And then what is the best practice in this? Starting a business. So what is the best practice available all over the world? So in starting the business, so they will take the best practice and then they will compare it with what is happening in your country. So what is your distance with the frontier? Frontier means the best practice in that particular category. So the difference, we are very close to the best practices. And DTF factor has also closed down quite considerably. And a lot of factors, you can see that DTF factor is more than 80%. So this means we are closer to the best practices of the world, almost about 80%. So it's just a gap of 20% with the best practice in the world, right? Yes, of course, there are a lot of areas where we need improvement. But if you look at this result, the result itself is amazing in the sense that it has never happened in the past. So you have to look at the grassroots reality. You look at the kind of economy we have been able to bring forth, and then see these changes from that light. You don't compare it what is happening in New Zealand, what is happening in US. Compare it to what has happened in India 20 years back, what has happened in India 30 years back, and where have we reached? And what has happened in last 1 year or 2 years, what kind of changes are happening. So this is not to say that, everything is rosy and things are going 100% fine. So all you have to do is to build upon it. And the results are not going to be, it's not a magic wand that, just did demonetization, everything is solved. It's not going to happen like that. But yes, we are on the right track. It's not that we are not on the right track. Things are happening, and I'm pretty happy that things are happening. And this has put the Indian economy back to the international map, right? The last thing I'll talk about is about prices, inflation, right? So it has got a huge impact over there. So once the WPI is going down or CPI is going down, then there is a possibility of reducing the interest rate by the banks, right? So in India also, you look at this, how this works, the banks are, say the Reserve Bank of India has reduced the repo rate by 25%, 25 BPS or 50 BPS. And the way it is translated into the reduction of the interest rate charged by the bank is very less. And therefore, the entire thing is not translated back into the interest rate which is charged by the bank, right? So the RBI is giving you the opportunity to reduce the rate, but the bank is not reducing the rate. So banks were asked, why you are not reducing the rate, why there is a gap between these two? They said, no, we are calculating the total cost of capital. And if you look at the total cost of capital, it's pretty high, and that's why we are not able to reduce the rate. Now the government is saying, don't look at the total cost of capital. What has happened to your capital in the last 50 years is none of our concern. What is happening to your capital today is our concern. So look at the marginal cost of capital, not the total cost of capital. So the marginal cost of capital is that if the bank is borrowing the capital and making some addition to the existing capital stock, so what is the cost of acquiring the additional funds? So look at that. And there should be a benchmark rate. So there is no benchmark rate in India. So now the government is saying that repo rate should be the benchmark rate. For example, the LIBOR rate is the benchmark rate in London. LIBOR is London Inter-Operative Rate, right? LI, Bank Operative Rate, right? Something of this sort, LIBOR, LIBOR. So when one bank actually transacts with the other bank, there is a rate which is fixed. And there is no difference in one bank transacting with X bank or the Y bank. But here, there is a lot of difference. So if one bank is transacting with HDFC or with Axis Bank, there will be two different rates. And that's the reason why, as a customer, if you go to Axis Bank, you go to SBI, they will have different rates altogether. And the impact of reduction in repo rate is not fully seen in the interest rate. And therefore, there is no logic for any economic management that if your WPI is lower, if your CPI is going down, and if your repo rate is brought down, why the interest rate should not be brought down, right? There is no logic. So a good economy is the one which actually sees a lower rate of interest and also a lower rate of inflation. And this is not very far to be seen in India. So this is going to happen very soon. And therefore, tightening the noose is very important. So demonetization has come as a tightening of noose to many sections of the society. And the pain is absolutely evident. the pain is not about the fact that, you know, that there's something wrong is happening with them. The pain is about that, you know, they are being pulled from doing something wrong. Right? So more of a pain of that sort. Therefore, I believe that it was a drastic measure, and I'm very hopeful. I'm a positive person. I look forward for better results all the time. So I'm sure that it's an optimistic picture for all of us, right? Any question from your side, then, you know, we can talk about that. Please.
So, being positive about anything that happened in our country for good is good. But being a critic also is good, that we should challenge them by prove yourself good. So, like you said that United Nations, World Bank has said that India is really, you know, doing really good. So maybe it's like they don't want us to grow. They want us to miss something that we are not seeing, that oh, this sort of thing may happen which will harm our economy in future. We may miss that, and they want us to miss that. That's why they are saying, yeah, you are good, so that we'll look over or we'll not look into that matter. They may have a, you know, hidden motive of this, and we all know United Nations have a, you know, great hand over World Bank. So it may be their one of their motives.
Fine. I mean, if this is your interpretation, it may be right. I'm not against what you have said. You said that critique is important. Yeah, whose critique is important? Because, you know, unless you have critique, you know, you don't grow better. So your holistic growth happens when you have the critique and people are able to express several opinions. Of course, let there be debate, no doubt on that. But what World Bank has said, and if you're saying that World Bank has been sold by or has been purchased by India, and, you know, it's United States, you know, interest that the World Bank is actually expressing, why this criticism did not come when World Bank was doing a lot of favor to India some 20 years back or 10 years back, or a lot of things that has the World Bank done in the past. When the World Bank was saying that India is not doing good around 1991 or even in 2000, World Bank said that India was not doing good. We never said that the World Bank has been purchased. But now when World Bank is saying that India is doing good, we are saying that World Bank has been purchased. I mean, I don't understand this kind of logic. The point is that we cannot question an international institution as credible as World Bank, which has representative of all the world economy in the world, just by rejecting the fact that no, they have been bought. It cannot so happen, right? So if they do not see things improving at the grassroots, if they do not have figure to support the improvement, they will never say that, right? So you're saying that the ease of doing business is a purchased report. How can it be? How can it happen? You know, I don't understand that. If this is possible, then, you know, I don't know, because I don't have the information. But yes, you know, critique is always welcome. You're free to express your opinion. You're free to say, you know, give the other side of the story. That's very important for us to have the other side of the story. Yes.
So here we are talking about economic growth, right? So as each and everyone sitting here knows that 80 to 90% of decisions taken by government is something which decides the economic growth, right? But still here, after knowing that demonetization, doing something is better than doing nothing, right? So this government is at least doing something, but still the opposition is opposing for the same. Recently on 8 November, they are celebrating the Black Day. The leaders of the opposition are Mayawati, Mrs. Mayawati, Gandhi family, Mulayam Singh and all, right? So what is your take on that? Don't you think that the political agenda in our country is somewhat we can call negative, because these people only think about winning the elections. They are not at all thinking about you know, the economic growth, because opposition like Congress have something somewhat we call the legends in economics, and still they are opposing the demonetization. So what is your take on the political agenda of our country?
I mean, this is really unfortunate for a country like India. You look at right from the beginning itself is happening because the political agenda is taking precedence over economic agenda, and more so the economic agenda is being pushed through the political lens, right? And it's not for the first time that's happening. It's actually been the story of Indian political system. Even Indira Gandhi, when she was in full power, and she was talking about, she was actually lecturing at Food and Agricultural Organization at the International Forum, and she was talking about how food is being used as a part of politics, right? So she herself admitted that political agenda actually drives the economic imperatives. But on the other hand, if you look at the economic factors, or economists themselves, they're not pretty sure about their own, I'm sorry to say that, but they're not also very unanimous in, there has never been a unanimity in the prescriptions. So that's also is guided by what kind of, ideology that you actually follow. So on the one hand, we have the political divisions of the thought process. On the other, among the intellectuals, there is a very sharp ideological divisions in the thought process. So those who are actually liberals or the left-leaning people, they have their own lens of looking at the things. Those who are the right, rightist, those who are the centrist, they will have their own lens of looking at things. And unfortunately, they don't see beyond their lens, right? And therefore, you cannot just expect that if a move is being made by a rightist government, will not be opposed by the leftist government, or if a move is made by the leftist government, will not be opposed by the rightist government. You cannot just imagine in India. So it's not happening in India. So therefore, that kind of level of maturity to look at what is in the interest of the country, what is actually working, what is not working, is not very much prevalent in our society. And therefore, all of us need to mature in that direction, including the intellectual class, including the politicians, and including you and me. That kind of level of maturity is still missing.
But I have something to say that the thing is that first you mentioned about the terrorist attack. After 8 November, we witnessed 3 terrorist attacks in Jammu and Kashmir. Uri was one of them, Pathankot was one of them, right? So we didn't see any kind of a reduction in terror attack. Again, Kashmir is again in unrest. Second is to print the new note, the government has spent somewhere around 7,000 crore to print the new currency. And again your GDP growth rate dipped to 6%, 6.7%. It again cost India too much. So why this, to achieve a small target, you spent lots of money to achieve this small target. Why it all happened? It might be happening, it might have been done in some other way.
Okay, all right. So I understand your point, but there are two aspects to it. There are two aspects that you have raised. One is the achievements have been not very much in comparison to the cost. I don't agree to that because that's the reason why I made all these points one by one, and I gave you my analysis. Maybe you have a different perspective. You can differ with me, but in my opinion, if you look at the black money, a lot of work has been done. I gave you the idea that demonetization actually attacks the black money in the cash segment. It does not actually addresses the black money in gold or in real estate, because you have to have different instruments to tackle that. And the government has come up with not only one instrument, demonetization, it is actually coming up with several instruments, like SIT has been made by the government, the Benami Transfer Act is being passed. So a lot of things are happening on the other side also. And therefore, if you look at the black money in the cash segment, 18% as I told you, the official figure is that 18% has been detected. So undetected income is about 18%. Undeclared and undetected incomes are about 18% that has come back. So in the total cash, if you have 18% already detected, so the rough estimation is about 20 to 25%, in the range of that. So you have to go about 5 to 6% or 10% maximum which is available in the cash segment, which is very much going to come forth because the number of sale companies, the number of accounts which is under scanning, that you will see the result in next 6 months and 1 year, right? So, in my opinion, the demonetization in the next 6 months or 1 year is going to wipe out all the black money in the cash segment. And the other measures which is actually adopted along with this is going to be the best foot forward for India. Never in the history of India or economic history of India that these kind of consolidated measures were taken to tackle the black. And that's why I said doing something is better than doing nothing. So you have a consolidated, and if you at all have some kind of hope that the black money will be tackled, it's here and it's now, right? And that's why looking at the cost of implementing, I'm not bothered about that.
Okay, again, one fact is that RBI came up with the data that all demonetized notes are back with the RBI. So what this is all about? What this data is all about? He says that we demonetized somewhere around 14.44 lakhs, and among in those 15.44 lakhs, 15.28 lakhs notes are back with RBI. So what this data
more than
is all
90%.
about?
See, when the cash is back to the economy, does not mean that the entire cash is white cash, right? So if the cash is deposited in Jan Dhan account, you have to check, you have to verify, you have to investigate whether this cash is really doubtful or not doubtful. That process is going on. That's why so many accounts have been, being scanned. Undetected income is already, being undetected. Income that is already been undetected, brought to the government, which is undetected, is about 18%. So, I mean, if somebody is saying that the cash, 90% cash has come back, so there was no black money, that's absolutely nonsensical. When the money is back, people will deposit money somewhere or the other. It does not mean that the whole money that you have deposited, the moment you deposit, it becomes white. It doesn't happen that way. The investigation is still going on. So that is the point I'm trying to make. Second, that you said, the figure of stone pelting, which was quoted by the finance minister, 75% is down, is a fact. You cannot deny that, right? Yeah, and one of the reason is the shortage of cash, and it's a fact that the terror funding has got a big hit in the recent time, and you look at any time in the history of terror in India, not so much of impact that has been done, which is being done now, and demonetization is of course one of the things that has hit them. There is no denying the fact. You cannot just deny this, saying that demonetization did not hit that. It hit them very badly. Attack will continue because that's going to be a larger issue, and unless the entire issue of terrorism is solved, you cannot expect that there's going to be a zero attack. You cannot just say that. So attack will keep on happening, but what is that we are doing today is the best foot forward and the best kind of measures that we can see in place. That's what I'm saying.
And one thing which I failed to understand while you were giving the speech was that you mentioned about the fact that it was a good sequence followed by demonetization and followed by GST. How you just elaborate with him?
All right. So I mean that's what economists say that even World Bank has accepted, and many economists have written about it. They said that demonetization followed by GST was the right sequencing. So in the form of economic reform, when you're talking about economic reforms, so GST is also demonetization. GST is also a part of economic reform, larger economic reform, right? So if you look at in the whole setup of economic reform, then the sequencing has to be in terms of black money eradication and then the rationalization of taxes. Because the moment you do rationalization of taxes, first rationalization of taxes and then addressing the black money issue, it is better to address the black money first and then introduce the rationalization of taxes. Yeah, I mean GST. So in sequencing of economic reform, it is considered better that GST followed by demonetization. In GST, the higher rates are now revised. You must have read the news that almost like more than 100, 250 items. The rates are cut. Of course, the best arrangements will take some time. You come up with one framework. It didn't work, 5-6 rates, and then you learn from the mistakes or learn from the experience, and then you start reforming it. So the committee is there. The committee is looking after it, right? So the best people are at work, so we don't have to worry about that. So the GST will be implemented in the best possible form. And all over the world, if you look at, is going to compare, our economy will become comparable with the rest of the world, right? Because when we have GST in place. And then doing business will become very, very easy in times to come. So these are the long-term reforms, these are not the short-term reforms. So anybody who is actually looking at these two things like, demonetization and GST, and then quick results, you have done it today and there is no result tomorrow, and that means it failed. I mean, I don't think this is the manner in which these two phenomena should be seen, right? So those who are looking at from the critical angle should also give us some kind of estimation what is going to happen in the next 5 years, right? Because these are long-term reforms, these are never short-term reforms. Black money, what happens is that once you wipe it out, you cannot just 100% wipe out the black money from any economy, right? So that's one thing you have to understand. But when the black money becomes quite a lot, then it starts, it works as a deterrent and your policy starts failing. So why your economic policies are not succeeding? Also because of the large black money, and this has happened all over the world where the black money has got mounted, right? And therefore onslaught on black money is very important. Secondly, the black money actually works against the poor, because black money is concentrated in the hands of rich people. Those who are dealing in the black money or use black money, they are the richest. They are the one who is living a lavish life, all kinds of, facilities are there with them. So it's actually anti-poor. Black money stacking is anti-poor. So any policy, whatever is the cost of that policy, and if it designed to attack the black money, whether it is going to unearth 100% black money or not, irrespective of that fact, is to be accepted and is to be praised, because this is one pro-poor measure that I can see. Any onslaught on the black money is a pro-poor measure. And as I told you, you just calculate the Gini coefficient, that is the Lorentz coefficient for inequality after a year, and I'm pretty sure that it's going to reduce in India. It's going to go down.
So while demonetization, at the time in the 8th of November 2016, that Kashmir, while in the terrorist attack in the Baramulla sector, they already have 14 lakh of new currency notes. And if we think about that, first of all, they are doing traditional crime, and now they are doing systematical crime. Like if you talk about the FDI comes from Mauritius. The highest FDI comes from Mauritius.
Yeah, tax revenue.
From there, we are doing Indian people are doing money laundering from that, and they provide they already take tax benefit also.
Right. I totally agree with you. I mean, these are the new channels. Mauritius has a tax haven, so there is a lot of channelization. I mean, these are not the criticism of demonetization. So demonetization is different. People will keep on finding out these kind of ways. If somebody has developed the technology of printing 2000 notes, it's not the fault of demonetization. I mean, this will happen. People are, they will find out a lot of ways. It doesn't matter. But it's okay. I mean, what you're saying is right. There can be several other, lot of avenues from where things will happen, and we'll have to keep eyes on that. So, I agree with you. Yes, all right. Just one minute, last thing that I just want to test you on a particular concept. Let's see how you respond to that. So here is a situation, right? And then you have to react. There is a layman. Is the rate of rise in prices that has gone down by 2%. It's not the prices that has gone down by 2%. You understand that? That's the concept of inflation. So if you don't know the concept of inflation, you cannot answer this question. Right? Got that point? Alright, thank you so much for being with me all this.
his excellence and words of thought. Thank you so much, sir. And I, on behalf of Takshila Business family and even on my personal behalf, thank his presence and making us a part of this esteemed and prestigious book launch. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.